Guys, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're watching this. Going into our week 9 quarterback rankings, reviewing the performances of week 8. Pretty, a little bit of a crazy week. Obviously, our boy AJ McCarron not starting this week, Nick Tiano getting the nod. We also saw Quinten Dormday, who had one of the greatest performances in XFL history, all three iterations. Regress mightily, going from 6 touchdowns in week 7 to 5 turnovers in week 8. So let's just jump right into it. Guys, no honorable mention this week. We can talk about Cole McDonald. Obviously, didn't record any stats in the regulation time. However, did score twice on the overtime, XFL overtime. Obviously, Houston winning, so shoring up their playoff hopes for 2023. Great thing for them, but McDonald kind of didn't do much until the later part of the game. Obviously, he does play a little bit, kind of that De'Aaron King effect, where him on the field, you got to account for it. It goes to 11 on 11 football, but no stats recorded. Coming in at number 9, San Antonio Brahmas, Jack Cohn, 123 of 41, 140, excuse me, 190 passing yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 rushing attempts, 14 rushing yards. Guy continues to regress despite he got healthy over the past couple weeks. He hasn't played in 2 weeks, remember. Seemed like a mid-tier guy in the beginning and then just constant regression. I was really big on Reed Sinet coming in. Brahmas look dead in the water. They do have Paxton Lynch. What does that mean for them? Do they throw him out this week? I mean, at this point, Jawan Pass isn't the guy. Jack Cohn isn't the guy. Kind of sucks because he did seem like he was on the edge of possibly making an NFL appearance or cameo, but it seems he'll be back in the XFL in 2024. You do see a guy like Cohn, who was so close, that true player 54 we always talk about, and essentially fail in the XFL. You kind of wonder what's going on, especially when they do have Alize Mack, Jockeys Patrick, Landon Akers, a bunch of guys who are credible football players. However, behind that makeshift offensive line, I don't even think it's scheme at this point. I think the injuries have decimated the Brahmas so much that Cone is just utterly ineffective. Coming in at number 8, Derek King, DC. Last week I had him at 6. Over 2 on passing, no passing yards, 3 rushing attempts, -1 rushing yards, 1 fumble, and he did have a long 7. I put him there at 8 because he was on the field a decent amount. I think it counted like 14 or 15 plays. Um, really just a guy you got to account for, kind of that Cole McDonald effect. Even when he's not putting up, dynamic numbers on the stat sheet, he is making plays by being on the field, and he opens up the game for Abram Smith when some of Abram Smith's better rushes came with King in the game because they're accounting for King on the read option. Number 7, Tiano time. Nick Tiano from the Battlehawks. Last week he was an honorable mention. Got his first pro start. First start since I think he said on his Twitter since 2020. Tiano came in on April 13th. Kind of put a thrilling victory with the help of Sterling Hoffrichter and Gary Jennings. Put together a win for the Battlehawks. Kind of got it together. Was able to get them to a game-tying field goal. Almost won the game with that jump ball to Marcel Aitman. Guy went 19 of 34, 194 passing yards, 1 TD, 2 picks, 8 rushing attempts, 51 rushing yards. He was recently placed on IR. Vinny Testaverde Jr. is joining the team, but he did have some impressive drives and a lot more mobile than I think anyone really expected. Tiano came in, got the job done, and unfortunately got hurt. AJ McCarron is trending upward. Coach Beck said he could have played last week. However, with them playing the Vipers and not the Sea Dragons, which is a big win in your in type of thing, we obviously want to see AJ play the best game of his career and be healthy and solidify the Battlehawks to the playoffs. Tiano's season is over. He did get his final stats for the year: 20 of 36, 199 passing yards, one TD, two picks, 8 rushing attempts, 51 rushing yards. He also put a pretty gnarly helicopter um, on a 2-point conversion to bring the Battlehawks within 3 in the second quarter on the extra point try. Coming at number 6, last week he was number 3, Quinten Dormday of the Orlando Guardians, 28 of 43, 303 passing yards, 1 TD, 2 picks, 5 rushing attempts, 17 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 3 fumbles. Dormandy's a guy in Orlando, especially with them out of the playoff picture. Now that they're eliminated, guys, it was a great story. His Week 7 performance, obviously Week 8, major step back. That's why we dropped him 3 rankings. I mean, now maybe we see kind of a more loose Quinn Dormady. Granted, Joe Powell made a pretty amazing interception on one of his picks, and then there was another one I think that wasn't really his fault. It looked like a miscommunication, but Orlando's had issues all year. It's only a matter of time because before he laid the dud, the guy's been out there doing his best. Been the most effective quarterback the Guardians have had all year. Unfortunately, now it seems that all these guys are just going to be playing to raise their stock for NFL teams. Quinn Dormady being one of them. Coming in at number 5, I got Brandon Silvers. Last week unranked because he didn't play due to injury. This week, 17 of 34, 146 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 1 rushing attempt, 1 rushing yard. Looking like the worst game of the season for him. Looked a little bit rusty. Obviously, they got the win. That's all that matters. Hoping a little bit of a rebound week for Silvers. Looked like one of the top guys, MVP candidate for the first 4 weeks of the season. Major regression, but could be that teams are kind of figuring out AJ Smith. Remember, first time as a professional offensive coordinator, excluding his time in the spring league. So there is some learning curves coming here. Maybe they're figuring him out. Also, John Shea Kirkland is out, and Ben Putnam was also out. So maybe there's some continuity issues there. Did see him throw a nice little pass to Garrett Owens. Kind of little. People forget about Owens, how versatile he is, how athletic he is. So there was that little wrinkle in the offense as well. They did get rid of Nick Hawley to bring in Michael Bandy. Bandy's been expanding his role. I think he had 49 yards this game. Uh, Overall, Silvers is due for a bounce back week. Hopefully for him. Obviously, they're making strides, continuing to progress into the playoffs. But Houston's got to figure it out, and that starts with Silvers and AJ Smith on offense. Coming in, number 4, Luis Perez, the Arlington Renegades, 16 of 25, 190 passing yards, no TDs, no picks, 2 rushing attempts, 0 rushing yards, and a fumble. First start for Perez since getting traded to the Renegades. It seems like it's his show. We've been beating the drum for Kevin Anderson. Obviously, those drums weren't loud enough. I like the performance. It was a great performance by the Renegades defense. Multiple turnovers left and right allowed Perez to kind of manage the game effectively, play within his strengths. This is the stereotypical Luis Perez stat line, coupled by a pretty good rushing attack led by Davion Smith. Perez, honestly, if he doesn't turn the ball over, especially the way how Houston's been a little bit loosey-goosey with the football, don't be surprised to see Arlington, led by Luis Perez, going into the championship game, be his second consecutive one. It won't be his second consecutive one, be his second consecutive playoff appearance, actually third because he led the Jousters of the Spring League there as well. Coming in number 3, Jalen McClendon, second pro start for the guy. Last week he was number 5. This week he's number 3. Went 13 of 23, 159 passing yards, 1 TD, no picks, 13 rushing attempts, 52 rushing yards, and a fumble. That was done by Travis Feeney on the beautiful coming off the left tackle and getting McClendon while he rolled out. Feeney talked about how athletic this guy was. A little bit harder to match up with him versus Brett Hundley or Luis Perez when they played him 2 weeks ago. McClendon continues to improve. The stat line wasn't as dynamic, but it's a better Battlehawks defense. Guy's only making his second professional start, everyone. So hold the brakes. Woodson calls him a baby. He's continuing to progress. If he comes back in 2024 with the Vipers, definitely expect that team to be a lot better, especially with that change at offensive coordinator, allowing for McClendon to have some stability in 2024. Number 2, Ben DiNucci. Last week, number 4, 28 of 42, 301 passing yards, 3 TDs, one pick, 4 rushing attempts, 23 rushing yards, one turnover. I think Danucci's at like 15 or 16 now, depending on how dynamic this Battlehawks defense is next week. Could could kiss that 20 turnover range. Just crossed 2,000 yards last year. The only quarterback to do that in the USFL was Jordan Teamu. Looks like he's going to break Tommy Maddox's 2001 record. Pretty awesome, if you ask me. He continues to make some NFL level throws, and as long as he doesn't have that turnover output, this team could easily upset the Battlehawks, who are favored at home. I do think that because of one of the best dynamic wide receiver rooms in the XFL, it does look like they're going to have 3 guys go over 500 yards. It does make Danucci's job a little bit easier, makes his stat line a little prettier, but he also has the ability to make some pretty boneheaded red zone throws. Overall, this week had some pretty weak quarterback play from the other XFL team. So Danucci squeaks his way up to number 2, especially with AJ not in. Coming in number 1, finally, Jordan Teamu takes number 1. Last week he was 2. Eventually, we had him at preseason. He was number 1. Bumped all the way down to 9 at one point. I think that was week 1 or 2. Kicks back up to the mid tier, and then over the last like 5 or 6 weeks, he's been awesome. I don't think he's thrown a pick in six games. He did have turnover. He fumbled twice, but he won 17 of 26, 247 passing yards, 4 TDs, zero picks, 8 rushing attempts, 13 rushing yards. Looks extremely comfortable in Fred Keiss's offense. The whole team is gelling. Even with a kind of down week, I think they only had 90 total rushing yards, which is low for them. This Teamu still is able to move the chains, whether it be by his legs. Him, Lucky Jackson, and Chris Blair are all on the same page right now. It's going to make a very scary team for the Battlehawks or the Sea Dragons if they play them in the playoffs, and then whoever they get in the championship game. I do think DC has solidified themselves as the best team now, especially with Teamu able to effectively move the football down through the air. That was my big knock. Could he do this consistently? He's proving everyone right that he could. He's making me look smart that he was our top quarterback in this league, and now he's ranked number 1. We'll see what happens when AJ comes back against the Sea Dragons, but this week it's Jordan Teamu as your number 1 quarterback. Guys, that was my week 8 quarterback rankings. Appreciate you guys tuning in a little bit quicker this week. Sorry for the late output of the video. It's been a crazy week at work. If you can, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot. Helps the channel grow. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.